It's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya.
Every male bloodline erased. Every single one. That's what geneticists found when they analyzed ancient DNA from the civilizations before the Aztecs, the Olmec, the Maya, the Toltec, the builders of Teotihuacan. Their Y chromosomes gone, deleted from history. But the women survived.
Teotihuacan is where they believe the gods had created humanity, had created all things, had created the sun, which they refer to as the fifth sun.
For decades, Graham Hancock claimed entire civilizations were wiped from the historical record. Scientists called him a fraud. They refused to take him seriously. But when the DNA results came back, they proved exactly what Hancock had been saying all along. The Aztecs didn't just conquer an empire, they replaced the erased fathers of an entire continent.
Aztecs expanded their influence through military conquests and strategic alliances. Their empire flourished, dominating much of central and southern Mexico by the early 16th century.
And what the genetic evidence reveals is far darker than anyone imagined.
The impossible discovery. In 2015, Dr. Pontus Skoglund at Harvard was running genetic analysis on ancient Amazonian remains.
Our labs tries to understand fundamental things about human past and evolution of disease. I think the recognition by the Blavatsky Committee is for our work over the past years, bringing ancient DNA into a large-scale genomic science.
When his algorithm returned results that made no sense, the DNA contained markers from Aboriginal Australians from the opposite side of the planet. That was impossible according to conventional archaeology. Every textbook said humans entered the Americas 15,000 years ago via a land bridge from Siberia. One migration, one source population, clean and simple. This was the story taught in every university, repeated in every documentary, displayed in every museum exhibit. No mysteries, no complications. But this Australasian signal predated the Siberian migration entirely.
The Aztecs say they started from this place up in the north called Chiquimostak. It was a cave, and inside that cave it had 7 different caverns. And there were said to be 7 different tribes.
It came from across the Pacific Ocean. It shouldn't exist. Dr. Skoglund checked his data 3 times. The signal remained. And get this, the signal doesn't appear uniformly across the Americas. It's concentrated in the Amazon basin, while nearly absent elsewhere. That pattern tells a disturbing story. A story of populations that were once widespread, but were replaced, absorbed, eliminated. Wave after wave of newcomers arrived, mixed with existing populations, and erased those who came before. Graham Hancock had argued this exact pattern for years. Scientists dismissed him as a pseudoscientist. They mocked his theories publicly. But now, the DNA was backing him up. And nowhere is this disturbing pattern more evident than in Mesoamerica, the land that would eventually become the Aztec Empire. The Erased Fathers. When Dr. Maria Ayla Eros at Mexico's National Autonomous University analyzed Y chromosome data from ancient Mesoamerican remains, she had to step away from her computer. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Her coffee went cold. She ran the analysis again, then a third time, hoping for different results. The results didn't change. They couldn't. The male lineages of the Olmec, the builders of Teotihuacan, the early Maya, the Toltec, all of them had vanished from the genetic record.
And it's a tragic end because they failed because of enemies they didn't know and had no idea how to deal with.
Not diminished. Gone. Every single one. The Y chromosomes that should have passed from father to son for hundreds of generations had simply stopped. Like bloodlines cut with a knife. Like someone had gone through the genetic record with a marker, and deleted entire family trees. But here's the deal. The female lineages persisted. Maternal DNA survived across every collapse. Women were absorbed into new populations, married into new communities, carried their genetic heritage forward through daughters and granddaughters. The men, the fathers, warriors, kings, deleted from existence. This wasn't gradual blending over centuries. The breaks coincided exactly with moments of civilizational collapse. Sudden, violent, complete.
If you want to keep
uncovering secrets buried in ancient DNA, hit subscribe now, because this is just the beginning. The Teotihuacan Massacre. One example stands above all others: Teotihuacan. At its peak, this city housed over 125,000 people, rivaling Rome in population and grandeur. Its pyramids still stand today, silent witnesses to something terrible. Its influence extended across all of Mesoamerica. Trade goods bearing its symbols have been found hundreds of kilometers away. The Aztecs, arriving centuries later, believed it had been built by gods. They named it the place where men became gods.
They were so pale. Some of us believed they were messengers of the gods.
Then around 550 AD, Teotihuacan fell, and what the DNA reveals reads like a crime scene report. Temples still smoldering, blood soaking into plaza stones, monuments deliberately destroyed with fury suggesting hatred, not just conquest, statues defaced, sacred spaces burned, and within a single generation, different men walking through those same streets, different Y-chromosomes, different fathers, different bloodlines entirely. The genetic signature didn't shift gradually, it changed overnight, almost completely. Imagine an entire city's worth of fathers, brothers, sons vanished, replaced by strangers who took their homes, their temples, their wives. The women remained. Their mitochondrial DNA shows continuity across the collapse. They survived, absorbed into whatever new order emerged. But their husbands, fathers, sons, replaced systematically, completely. Dr. Andre Moreno Estrada at Mexico's National Laboratory of Genomics described the data as watching a crime committed in genetic slow motion. The same heartland shows identical patterns. Maya sites reveal the same breaks, coinciding with the classic Maya collapse. Toltec signatures vanish after their empire fell. Each civilization experienced the same fate. Basically, someone was systematically eliminating men while preserving women for thousands of years across an entire continent, and that's putting it lightly. War explains part of it. Ancient armies killed men and took women as captives or wives. Over time, this erases Y chromosomes while maintaining maternal DNA. Conquerors become fathers, the conquered become genetic ghosts. But the scale of what happened in Mesoamerica, this wasn't ordinary warfare. This was a recurring nightmare replaying across centuries. Each collapse created a vacuum, each vacuum filled by newcomers who dominated until the next wave arrived and erased them too. But wait until you hear who stepped into the final vacuum. The Aztec genetic conquest. The timing of the Aztec arrival looks almost too perfect to be coincidental. According to their own histories, the Mexica wandered for generations before finding home. They claimed origin from a mythical place called Aztlan. Guided by their god, Huitzilopochtli, to seek a specific eagle sign, an eagle perched on a cactus eating a snake, they found it on an island in Lake Texcoco in 1325, founded Tenochtitlan, and began their meteoric rise to power. Here's the deal, though. When the Aztecs arrived, they were walking into a genetic graveyard. The region had been destabilized by centuries of violence and collapse. Male lineages of earlier civilizations had been shattered beyond recognition. Surviving populations were fragmented, their paternal ancestry broken and replaced multiple times over. Some researchers now whisper about whether the timing was truly coincidental or whether the Aztecs somehow knew the genetic landscape had been cleared for them, whether their centuries of wandering was actually strategic positioning. Here in a Highlands Plateau, lies the enormous archaeological site of the ancient city of Teotihuacan. Whether they waited until the ground was prepared and the competition eliminated, we can't prove it, but the coincidence is deeply disturbing. Into this fractured landscape came the Aztecs, with their intact Y chromosomes. Their male lines hadn't been shattered by conquest. They hadn't been absorbed and diluted over time. They arrived as a coherent genetic unit, fresh blood entering a land of broken bloodlines, ready for new fathers. And they moved fast, terrifyingly fast. Within 2 centuries, they built one of Earth's largest cities. Tenochtitlan was bigger than London or Paris at the time. When Spanish conquistadors first saw it rising from the lake in 1519, they thought they were hallucinating. Bernal Diaz del Castillo wrote that soldiers asked whether the things we saw were not a dream. Causeways stretched across water, connecting the island to the mainland. Aqueducts carried fresh water for miles. Floating gardens called chinampas fed hundreds of thousands. Massive pyramids dominated the skyline, their steps still stained from fresh sacrifices. But what they built on those erased bloodlines, that's where this story turns into a horror movie. As the Aztecs expanded, their male lineages spread across central Mexico like genetic wildfire. They married women from conquered populations, blending their Y-chromosomes with the maternal lineages that had survived earlier collapses. Within just a few generations, Aztec paternal ancestry became dominant across their entire growing empire. This wasn't just political conquest, it was genetic conquest on a continental scale. Dr. Alexander Ioannidis at Stanford analyzed city-states that fell under Aztec control. The Y-chromosome shifts following conquest were dramatic, sometimes occurring within a single generation. Local gene pools were completely reorganized. Women from conquered regions appear in genetic samples from the Aztec heartland, suggesting large-scale movement of female populations into the center of the empire. The pattern is unmistakable. Conquer a city, kill or displace the men, absorb the women, repeat. The Aztecs were filling vacuums created by the destruction of earlier male populations. They were becoming the fathers of regions whose original fathers had been erased from existence.
For 100 years, the Aztecs rule over central Mexico. But at the peak of their power, they make a crucial mistake. Their fall is unstoppable.
They weren't just building an empire of territory and tribute, they were building an empire of blood, extending their paternal ancestry across a continent that had been waiting for new fathers. And get this, they had a tool that made this genetic takeover even more efficient: Nahuatl, the Aztec language. When the Spanish arrived, they were shocked at how widely Nahuatl was understood. Traders spoke it, messengers carried it, marketplaces from northern Mexico to Central America echoed with it. The language had spread far beyond Aztec military reach. Language travels with people. Wherever Nahuatl went, Aztec genes followed. Merchants, soldiers, administrators, priests, each group carried their genetic heritage along with their vocabulary. DNA confirms this pattern. Regions connected by Nahuatl trade routes show genetic mixing consistent with long-distance movement in intermarriage. The Aztecs weren't just conquering territory, they were systematically rewriting the genetic code of an entire civilization.
Hancock vindicated. It's not that simple, though. The story goes much deeper than the Aztecs. The Euralesian signal that started this entire investigation, it's ancient, far older than the Aztecs, older than the Olmec, older than any known Mesoamerican civilization. It represents contact or migration at the very dawn of human presence in the Americas, possibly 15,000 years ago or more. The pattern of genetic replacement wasn't unique to recent history. It was a recurring process from the very beginning. For at least 15,000 years, populations were constantly rewritten, the genetic slate wiped partially clean over and over, wave after wave of newcomers arriving, wave after wave of men being erased. The Aztecs were just the most recent chapter in a story of perpetual erasure. Graham Hancock argued for decades that civilizations were erased from history, that the past is far more violent and strange than textbooks admit, that entire peoples vanished and were replaced, evidence buried or ignored by mainstream archaeology. They called him crazy, called him a fraud, refused to take his theory seriously. The DNA proves entire bloodlines were erased systematically, repeatedly across millennia. Not metaphorically, literally. Genetic signatures of fathers and sons cut off and replaced over and over for thousands of years, exactly what Hancock predicted. What happened to the men of Teotihuacan? Who killed them? Who replaced them? What forces drove these cycles of genetic replacement? Why did Aztecs arrive precisely when their intact male lineages gave maximum advantage? These aren't academic questions anymore. They're crime scene questions. Dr. David Reich at Harvard put it bluntly, we're only beginning to understand the true violence embedded in human genetic history, violence leaving its signature in every sample, violence written into the blood of survivors, violence that mainstream archaeology refused to see until the DNA made it impossible to ignore. The difference between Aztecs and predecessors, the Aztecs were interrupted. Spanish arrival in 1519 ended their expansion. European diseases decimated their population. European weapons destroyed their military. European colonization dismantled their empire before they could complete their genetic conquest. But their genetic legacy survived. Millions of people today carry Aztec ancestry, bloodlines that spread across Mesoamerica during their brief century of dominance. The genetic empire they built in just 100 years survived 500 years of colonization, disease, and deliberate cultural destruction. The Spanish burned their books, destroyed their temples, banned their religion, but they couldn't erase the DNA. Aztec Y-chromosomes are still there today, still dominant, still marking the genetic landscape of Mexico and Central America. Hancock asked uncomfortable questions for decades. He suggested official history was incomplete, that catastrophic events erased evidence, that migrations occurred that mainstream archaeology refused to acknowledge. The DNA is providing uncomfortable answers. Not everything Hancock theorized has been vindicated, but the core argument that the conventional narrative is wrong, that populations were erased and replaced repeatedly, that the Americas hold secrets far stranger than textbooks admit, is being confirmed by the very science meant to settle these questions. So, here's the question that should keep you up tonight. If the Aztecs built their entire empire on erased bloodlines, how many other civilizations are hiding the same dark secret? How many founding myths are actually covering up ancient genetic genocides? How many empires rose not through innovation or divine favor, but because they arrived at the exact moment when the men before them had been conveniently eliminated? The DNA doesn't lie, it can't, and it's telling us that human history is far darker, far more violent, and far stranger than anyone wanted to admit. Hit that like button and subscribe because we're just getting started digging up what they buried. And if you think this is disturbing, wait until you see what DNA revealed about the builders of the Egyptian pyramids.